to be part of the local church. That also looks like encouraging the local believers and lifting them up and discipling them as possible. We exist in Czech Republic specifically to reach the Czech youth for the gospel. We've been there for just over 25 years, and we are starting to see some real growth in our ministry, which is super exciting. The next slide there are 4 main groups, and I won't read through all of these things, but we mainly focus on local church ministry, coming alongside them, encouraging them in whatever ways they need. We also have guest services. We rent out our property throughout the year, depending on to different church groups, youth groups, some school groups, and things like that. They use our property when we aren't using it. And then we also, our main ministry is our camping ministry, winter and summer seasons, and our internship and discipleship program. So we have interns that can come for 1 to 2 years, either from here in America, or we do have some that are from Czech or different parts of the world, and they come and learn how to be a missionary. What does it look like to serve full-time on a field? What does it look like to operate in a team? What does it look like to work with people who don't speak your language? And is this actually for them? So that's part of our program. And then also we're working towards building, towards launching a disciple maker program where we're working with our volunteers on a year-round basis, pouring into them and teaching them how to pour into others. That is happening within our staff, that is happening within Czech Republic, but we want it to be in a more organized fashion, that they have specific things that they're studying through, and they pick one person and specifically work towards building them up and discipling them. That's one of the biggest things that we see as a need in the church, is for strong believers who want to disciple and work with other believers. We have a lot of people who come to church on Sunday morning and leave, and that's it. And they've checked their box and they move on. And we want the local churches to be strong and to be spreading the gospel. In order to spread the gospel, they need to be strong at their core. And so we want to see those young people stepping up in the church and discipling and pouring into people. So you can go to the next slide. Really over the last year and a half, I know this is farming country, so you all understand what I'm talking about, seed planting and harvesting, and we usually do that in the spring, and then you harvest in the fall. And as a ministry, we don't do things just in the spring and in the fall, or there's no real specific timeline for seed planting and harvesting when you talk about souls. But we've seen a lot of seed planting and harvesting in the last couple of years as a ministry, and it's super exciting to see the Lord work in very different ways. This is a very special and very materialistic, I'll use that word, seed planting over the last really year. We have a local school that has been renting part of our property from us during the school season. They've had a couple of our apartments, and they sort of convert them into classrooms. They work as a alternative school, and so sort of, if you're familiar with Waldorf or Montessori style, some of the grades are put together. They do a lot of time outside, and it's really a neat thing that was supposed to be a temporary solution, that they would rent our property until their building was ready. Their building has since fallen through. That is not an option anymore, and they like working with us. So this spring we completely redid the upper level of our main building. If you go to the next, you can see some construction photos, to be able to certify it as a school with the government so that they could receive the government funding. So they were operating as more of a tuition-based, and they really needed to be able to expand and have the government funding. So we knocked down walls. You can go back one, actually. If you see in the bottom, we're knocking down walls to our accommodation rooms upstairs, and we also redid our kitchen, so some of those pictures are from the kitchen, and put in larger classrooms, so we don't have 12 bedrooms upstairs anymore with 6 beds. We have 4 large rooms, and 3 of which that can be split in half. If you go to the next slide, you can see the larger rooms, and several of them have 3 of them have mobile walls so that we can split them into smaller rooms. We haven't lost any bed space, which is nice. So then during our summer season, we can still house just as many campers. We also put in a barrier-free entrance entrance on the stairway. I still need to figure out what it's called. It's flat for a wheelchair, but I have been translating during our staff meetings, and so I knew what they were talking about when they were announcing. They were talking about like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We need to put the chair on the stairs that goes up and down, and I knew what they were talking about in Czech, but I couldn't remember what the word was for it in English, and so I called it the electric chair because everybody knew what we were talking about. And so now, even though we've moved to a flat base so that you could put a wheelchair or a car or whatever on it, we still call it the electric chair. So we put in an electric chair so that they have access if they ever have a disabled student or even throughout our rental services, if that's available. That was part of the requirements for the school. We also put in skylights in the ceiling. So in Czech, they are required to have a certain amount of daylight that comes into the classrooms from a certain direction, and they're also supposed to have a certain amount of artificial light available. And I don't know how they calculate it, and it's really specific, and it's kind of crazy. So we had to put in skylights in order to meet that requirement for daylight. And actually, it's kind of neat up there because we don't really need lights, especially in the summertime, because those skylights just shine right down, and you don't really need artificial light at all. So we have seen a lot of. None of us are really construction people. None of our staff are. We've learned a lot over the last couple of months, and it was a very crazy season. If you go to the next slide, this is just a couple days before our summer camp season started. So the big window that you can see on the left is our service window. That's where we give food out, and as you can tell, that's not ready for food service. This was just a couple days before our camp started this summer. And then the tall stack of brown wood there in the middle sort of the screen are bunk beds that need to be built before our campers come. So that was a little crazy, and as the camp administrator, I'm going, okay, we need to get done. Like, we have campers coming very soon. And within just a very short amount of time, we finished several large pieces and built lots of bunk beds. And on the next one, you can see the ground got flattened out, and we built all of our bunk beds, and the kitchen got completed, and we saw God's faithfulness in people and in materials and time and all of that on full display. So this is a very unique opportunity for us as a ministry to open our doors to the community in general. We have parents and their kids and their friends and people that would like to send their kids to school, and the teachers and their families, and the principal and her family, all of these people on our property almost every single day without us really doing anything. Obviously, we did a whole lot with the project, but they are on our property and interacting with our staff without us inviting them, without our running our own programs. And we can start building those relationships that build into opportunities to share the gospel. We have a property that was built as a communist retreat center. And then once communism fell, it was sort of a community center. It was kind of open for the public. And then Word of Life bought it and basically closed the gates. In many ways, understandably, because we purchased the property, it wasn't a community center anymore. And so people are kind of like, okay, we're not really sure what Word of Life is. That's a little weird. They're mostly like internationals. They're out there in the middle of the woods. They closed off our community center. Like, they're just strange. And so we have this has been part of a longer process of rebuilding those relationships within the community and showing them that we do care about you and we want to be part of what's going on, and be involved in what's happening in the community, and not just close off and like, okay, well, if you register for our camps, you can come, but otherwise you better stay away. That's not our philosophy at all. And so this has been a really cool opportunity for us to open those doors just a little bit wider and see people interact with our property and with our staff. And now we have people who talk about us in the towns, and they're like, oh yeah, have you heard about Word of Life? And it's not like, oh yeah, those Word of Life people, they're a little weird. It's like, oh yeah, the school is over there and they have a pool, and we want to send our kids to the school. And so it's been a huge answer to our prayers, to be able to be building relationships within the community and sharing the gospel there. We don't have a local church within a 15-minute radius of our property. And so for all intents and purposes, though Word of Life is not a church, we are the presence of God there in that 15-minute radius. And so for us to have these opportunities, and different things where we're not just like, if it's a religious thing, then you can come. But it's anybody is welcome, and we want to build relationships with you. We want to be friends with you. We want to help fill needs that we see within the community, which that was one of them. So that was a really cool opportunity for us, and we're excited to see how the Lord continues to move and work in that. This summer camp, we went, you can go to the next one. We went right from the project right into summer camp, quite like from one week to the next. And that was a little crazy. We all kind of like, okay, like now we're going to move forward. And we had 4 weeks of a very full summer camp this year. We had just over 260 campers, which is incredible. And we can see people, our volunteers and different campers that come back year after year, and then new people. We teach English and sports throughout summer camp, and so that's the big draw. So we have non-believers that will send their kids to our camp because they want them to learn English. We have American teams that come over each week, and they run the English classes and coach the sports. And so everybody wants to come to our camp because they want to learn the English. They want to interact with the English speakers. We have kids that their parents tell them, you go learn the English or play the sports or whatever, enjoy the games, but don't listen to all that Christian stuff. And those are often the kids that end up getting saved, because those are the kids that they're listening to our meetings going, actually, this is what I'm missing. And their parents might deny the fact that they're missing something, but those kids understand that, like, actually there is a hole somewhere, and this is what's filling it. And so we've seen young people come to the Lord, rededicate their lives to the Lord. We had 37 young people accept Christ this summer, and we had 71 make decisions to follow him more closely. So we don't do like a missions call necessarily, but we'll do a challenge for them, like, okay, you have believed in Jesus, now what's your next step? Maybe that looks like reading your Bible every day. Maybe that looks like finding a youth group. Maybe that looks like telling your friends about Jesus. Where is that next step, and what do you need to do to get there? And so 70 of our campers made that decision this summer. We also have hundreds of Americans that come and help. We have other internationals that come and help. We have a lot of Czech volunteers that come and help. There are counselors, and they work behind the scenes in the kitchen and in maintenance and all of that. And every single person that we see come on our property, our goal is that they would take their next step. Somewhere along the line that they should be making those decisions to move closer and grow more like Jesus. And we have seen that over and over and over again. I could talk for hours about just summer camp, just these 4 weeks of summer camp, and the things that we're able to share with them. This picture in the corner with the two girls, one of them is blindfolded. I had somebody from the church go, "What is that?" I'm like, okay, it's not that big of a, it's not scary, I promise. So I gave one of the kids messages this year, and I was talking to them about listening to Jesus. And so I had one of them blindfold, and I made a little course down the center of the aisle, and the girl was supposed to tell her, hey, turn right, go straight, turn left, stop, come backwards or whatever. And instead of just talking to her, she grabbed a hold of her arm and walked her through. And so I told the kids, I was like, see, listening to Jesus is important because he can see what is ahead, even though you might not be able to. And they're like, yeah, but she held on to her. And I was like, all the more reason, hold on to Jesus, and he's holding on to you, and not just speaking to you, but also leading you through every way, and following him closely, and moving with him, and not just doing whatever you want. So that was kind of it wasn't my original intention but it turned into even a better illustration. One of our young volunteers, her name is Clara, in the black and white outfit there. She has been one of our counselors for a couple years now, and she's often on our band, and she's just a sweetheart. And we have this set up during our meetings that all of our volunteers will share their testimony. So it's usually the counselors. Sometimes I pick from the crew, from the kitchen and maintenance crews and stuff. And we used to do it that they came and they did their training, and we taught them how to share their testimony. These are the important things that are necessary, and you need to be ready at any time to share your testimony. And we used to be like, okay, welcome to the meeting. You're going to share your testimony tonight. Come on. And they're supposed to be ready. And they did not like that. And so a couple years ago, I started scheduling them. And so I said, okay, you're going to do it Monday night. You're going to do it Tuesday night. And I would release the list and put it out in their groups and whatever. And they were responsible for knowing when they had to share their testimony. On Tuesday night, we have two that share. That's our full gospel presentation and invitation evening. And I knew the guy that was supposed to share. I knew he needed to share his testimony, but I didn't know if Clara knew, if she had seen the list. And they don't like being picked on randomly, and so I wanted to make sure that she knew. So I called him first, and I went and snuck off to her while he was sharing his testimony, and I was like, hey, you're sharing next, right? And she's like, yeah, but I wanted you to call me first because his testimony is powerful, is so good. And I was like, oh, how do I quickly impart to you in the midst of the meeting that's happening around us that your testimony is just as important? I was like, no, your testimony is just as important. And the guy that was sharing is one of our Canadian volunteers, and he comes and counsels, and the kids love it because he talks to them in English, and they have a great time. And his testimony is powerful. He came from a Mennonite background. He left the church. He started going to a different church and got saved. He's really grown in his faith with the Lord, and in his walk with the Lord. And so his testimony is powerful, but hers is just as powerful. And so she's like, yeah, but his is, more whatever. And I wanted you to call me first. I was like, no. That's not how this works. And so I called her to share her testimony, and she's one of our few volunteers who has grown up in the church and got saved at a younger age. And so she thinks she has a simple testimony, which is my testimony too. I grew up in the church. I was saved at a very young age, and have moved with walked with the Lord for years and years and years, and never been pulled out of drugs or alcohol or this big cool. And I was like, no, that's not what that means. That's not what makes the testimony powerful, is the fact that God has changed your life. And so she stood there talking to young Czech people who she used to sit in their shoes. She's just a couple years older than most of them. And she started sharing about how the Lord had changed her life. And not just in the moment of salvation, but how he has worked in the difficulties she has in school, and how she has learned more about him, and the impact that Word of Life has had on her life and things like that. And she started tearing up. And as I shared earlier, the Czech culture is very cold. They don't show emotions. They're not going to tell you how they're feeling until you've built a good relationship with them. And they're certainly not going to share it in public. And so for her, as this young Czech woman who is standing in front of her peers, essentially, telling them, God changed my life, in many ways, that night specifically, was more impactful than this young Canadian, because it's her story from a young Czech person. And there are so many different ways that the Lord uses to work through the life of different people. And he uses my story in different ways, and he uses everybody else's story in different ways. But that night, hearing her share that testimony it was so powerful for those young people, because this isn't just an American thing or Canadian thing. Like, oh yeah, sure, the internationals, God has changed their life, woohoo. Like, no, this has happened to people that live in my life, in my country. This has happened to people that struggle with the same things that I struggle with, that have the same amount of pressure in school that I have. And it was so cool to see that. And I don't know if she fully understood just how special that moment was. But I did, and I know that a lot of other people saw that, and there was hardly a dry eye in the place. It's just it's a really cool place to be able to be part of God changing lives and him impacting different people in different ways. And it doesn't happen just at summer camp, but we see that the most, obviously, during summer camp. Just to hear about how God is moving and working in the Czech Republic. We had a missions conference at Word of Life in New York just a few weeks ago, and our regional director from Europe was sharing that most people would call Europe post-Christian. And in many ways, that is true. Lots of people have moved away from the Lord. Communism and other things have swept religion out of the door. And he said, we are not post-Christian. We are pre-revival. And we can see the Lord working in those ways. It's not these massive 200 people, getting saved at one time. It's not these huge rallies. It's tiny. It's super special. It's super special. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is more on a personal side. These next two, I have been in Czech Republic for almost 8 years. In March it'll be 8 years, and I am just now, as we slowly build relationships, starting to feel like my language skills are well enough, and I'm building relationships outside of like, oh yeah, I'm friends with you because you're a missionary at Word of Life. But actively being able to build friendships within the local communities, and do coffee dates and go on shopping sprees and doing like daily life things, which is super fun because you feel more at home, and there's more like casual opportunities to speak about the Lord and just be in the community. I have been able to do lots of friendship building, and then also on the next slide you can see a couple pictures from being able to advance in my language skills has been a huge blessing. A lot of times we joke that we wish that God would just like download, like, where's the USB port, like just download Czech into my head. Czech is one of the hardest languages for English speakers to learn. It has a lot of different cases. There's 21 different ways to say almost every single word in the language, based on the case and past, present, future, and where it is in the sentence, and all this grammar stuff that I can't really remember in English, let alone in Czech. And so it's been a long process of learning the language. This past spring, I was able to share my testimony in Czech, which was a huge thing. I wrote it all out in Czech, and I basically read it, but I did say it without a translator. So that was a huge move. I also was a guest speaker at our local youth group, and talking about my life and God's moving in my life and how I ended up in Czech Republic and what I'm doing with Word of Life and all of that. That was super cool to be able to answer. I know I made so many mistakes. I know I did. I look back and I'm like, oh, that was rough, because it was much more conversational. It wasn't just, I couldn't read the answers, and he jumped around, and I had some of the answers written down, and then he moved and skipped questions, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't know what I'm supposed to be saying. But they all understood me, and so that was really huge. One of the other things that I've been actively working towards in the last little bit is what I call mic fluency, being able to do some announcements and different things. As a camp administrator, that's a big part of my role. Like, okay, welcome to the meeting. Okay, the meeting is over. This is what's next. And I usually have to be like, hey, come here and translate for me. Hey, come here and translate for me. And so several times this summer, I was able to open or close the meetings or lead throughout the meeting without a translator, which was a huge step for me to not just stand in front of our volunteers or have one-on-one conversations, but to be able to stand in front of like 300 people and be like, okay, I'm going to speak in my second language in a microphone and you're all going to hear me. So that has been super special just to see God continuing to bless me in that way and work forward in being able to communicate in that language. You can live in Czech without knowing the language, but I don't know how people do. I've heard stories of people that can only ask for a beer in Czech, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how do you go to the grocery store or the pharmacy or anything and be able to ask for what you need? Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm like, no, I need to be able to like communicate with you. So that's been really special. Okay, the next. I will skip over this only because I want to have time for questions. But so I'm here in the States for 6 months now. I got back at the end of July and I go back at the end of January. And one of my biggest goals during this time is to get back to 100% support. It's been a couple years since I've been well and truly at 100%. For various different reasons. I increased my budget a couple years ago and haven't hit that 100 mark yet. So I am focused on getting new churches and talking to individuals and things. Actually, a vast majority of my support does come through individuals. And I was doing the math the one day, and if everybody who was on my support team increased by like 25%, I would be at 100%. I was like, oh, that's not that much. So it's been a slow process, meeting new churches, going to new individuals. That takes time here just as much as in Czech Republic. And so that's one of my biggest prayer requests right now is to get back up to that 100%. And if you have more questions about that, we can talk about that afterwards. I won't keep beating it with. But you can go next. Next steps. I have my table set up out back. There's some information about Czech Republic. I have a Czech Bible there if you want to see what the Czech language looks like. I have some Czech chocolate. It has peanuts in it. So if anybody has a peanut allergy, please do not eat it. Don't want to be responsible for that. I also have contact cards out there if you want to sign up for my newsletter so that you can get it by email or by regular mail every other month or so. I can answer more questions and things like that. I also have, you can go to the next slide. That's more broad prayer requests, which I won't read through all of them. I also have a Christmas in Czech event coming up December 10th. That's a Wednesday at Elton Baptist Church. That's my sending church. I'm going to do some Czech sweets and things and have some information about the traditions that they celebrate in Czech Republic with Christmas. So if anybody wants to come out for that and taste some Czech food and hear about Czech Christmas traditions, that's December 10th from 5 to 7 at Elton Baptist. That's a good opportunity also for people to bring friends and family. If you have people that go to different churches and they don't want to miss a Sunday service at their own church to come in and hear my presentation, then that would be a good chance to bring them out and hear about my ministry and what God is doing in Czech. It's also, I feel free to use the food as an incentive, like, hey, there's going to be food, you should come. That's 100% allowed. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be exciting. I'm missing Christmas. They opened the Christmas markets already, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be there for the Christmas season this year. So that'll be a fun, like, tie-in. Give me a little bit of Czech without actually being there. So we have a few minutes left. I will open the floor for questions if anybody has any. And if we run out of time, then you can ask me afterwards.